Continuing my quest after I covered Resident Evil 4 last time, in this video we're going to be diving into the most often overlooked entry in the entire Resident Evil series, Resident Evil 5. This game is kind of the oddball of the mainline Resident Evil games because it came out after the love and praise that 4 received, but before the controversy of 6, which I will get to by the way. So it's often just the game that's kinda there. Not a lot of people really talk about 5 on its own when discussing Resident Evil, whereas 4 and 6 have countless videos and articles of them all over the internet. This was also the first Resident Evil game that you could play in co-op, either in split screen or online, and for this review I decided to use that feature and played through the entire game with Alan. But let's stop arsing around and get straight into what I thought of
Resident Evil 5.
And right off the bat, I think that's the worst announcer in the entire Resident Evil series. Honestly, I think the original is the best, but I guess this is what they thought was a good take. So where do we start with RE5? I guess with the fact that this game is very similar to RE4, and I mean in almost every way. The controls, the camera, the level structure, basically everything. However, I enjoyed this game more than 4. Perhaps it was because I was able to play it with Alan, or maybe the areas were a bit more refined, but either way, I enjoyed my time with 5 way more. I haven't played this game with the AI, but I definitely recommend playing this with a friend, because some of the game's areas are frustrating as hell, even with a friend, so I can only imagine what it's like with the AI. One problem we encountered before playing was that the Steam version of the game doesn't actually work without downloading a community-made patch due to a bug with how the game boots up. We were worried it wouldn't work, but sure enough, after we downloaded the patch and put it into the game folders, the game ran perfectly well. Just a word of warning if any of you plan to play this. But enough about that, and let's talk about the story. Set many years after Resident Evil 4, we follow former STARS member Chris Redfield and his new partner... Sheva, as they explore Africa for bioweapons that are in the hands of terrorists. This of course leads them to finding out the plagas from RE4 are not just in Spain, but also in other parts of the world. This then leads them to finding out Wesker is involved, and Jill, who Chris had presumed dead from a previous mission, is still alive. The goal then becomes to stop Wesker from releasing Project Ouroboros and creating a new world order. The game then ends with us defeating Wesker and stopping Ouroboros. Yes, the story really is that simple. I've skipped out a couple details of minor characters, but that is the story of RE5. Saying that, I wasn't really expecting a deep, intricate plot from a Resident Evil game. It's a story to follow in order to allow for cool set pieces and action. The gameplay here is identical to Resident Evil 4, so there isn't really a whole lot to say. The inventory system has been changed to only allow each character to pick up 9 items, including Healy items, guns, ammo, and anything else you may need, but story items are kept separate, meaning you never have to make any sort of decision whether to drop another item that you're carrying in order to pick up a key item you need to progress, which makes the whole game flow a lot better. But I do still miss that design from the originals. The game also got rid of any merchant type character, instead opting to have the player buy anything they need in between chapters from a menu. I did enjoy that I could reorganise my inventory between chapters and not be stuck with a bad loadout from a previous area, which some could say removes challenge, but I would argue that creates an overall better gameplay experience. The game has a large array of weapons, possibly even more than 4, with a large variety of handguns, rifles, semi-auto and automatic, shotguns and special weapons. With this large variety comes an amazing level of customization to a person's playstyle. For example, I had a very balanced loadout during our playthrough, whereas Alan ended up having his inventory mostly filled with guns. I didn't really talk about boss fights in the last video because in RE4 they sort of just show up and they're not given a whole lot of build up, whereas 5 makes the boss fights massive set pieces, like fighting a massive tentacle monster on a boat with turrets, fighting on a cargo ship with a massive creature that you have to shoot with rockets, fighting Albert Wesker multiple times, and trying to fight Jill without killing her. The only ones I have a problem with are the final boss and the boss of Chapter 5 too. One of the highlights for me was a boss that you fight on an elevator that's going down. Not one of the best boss fights in the game, and there are certainly better ones, but I just loved it for some reason. The boss in Chapter 5-2 gave us a lot of trouble for not being clear enough in what we were meant to do. We thought we had to use a flamethrower maybe 3 or 4 times and that would be it, as that's how most boss fights work. But no, you have to use the flamethrower to stun the creature and then shoot a tentacle that comes out the top. You do this 3 times. Due to unclear instructions in this fight, we ended up spending all of our ammo and resources the first time we tried it. The reason we thought we only had to use the flamethrower was because an earlier boss of the same kind of monster was killed by trapping him in an incinerator room, so we gathered that this fight would work in the same way. The other fight I didn't like was Albert Wesker's final fight, as we ended up so stuck on this fight that we flat out couldn't beat it, even when looking up exactly what to do. We never beat it, making this the second Resident Evil game in a row that I haven't beaten. This seems to be like a running thing with this era of the series, and I really hope it doesn't happen with 6. The QTEs were also quite annoying, as it's basically reliant on both players always paying attention, which meant that me and Alan ended up replaying them about 2 or 3 times. Although I don't see it as much of a problem, because it's the same thing as RE4, except now you have 2 people. So it's slightly worse in that sense, but overall, it's okay. For much of this game, you're in combat arenas, with very few areas where you actually have to backtrack to somewhere you've been before in order to try and solve a puzzle. And also, there aren't a whole lot of puzzles in this game. But, I will give this game credit. The puzzles are a lot better than 4. To me, the puzzles in RE4 were shocking. One of the examples being a painting puzzle where the answer is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So credit to 5 for actually putting in some effort. Another thing that differentiates this game from the others before it is that it doesn't use typewriters to save, but instead puts you at the beginning of each chapter and uses autosave checkpoints throughout the chapter. But if you quit out the game and reload it, you will have to start from the beginning of the chapter again. So my final thoughts on this game are: it's very underrated. It's not the classic survival horror that everyone loved so much, and this is definitely into the action era of Resident Evil. But I think we all have to accept the fact that this era exists, and it's actually not entirely terrible. So that was my review of Resident Evil 5, the forgotten child of the Resident Evil series. And it's going to be a while before the next one, because I have some task ahead of me, as I'll be covering the most hated game in the whole series. But if you did enjoy this review, remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And also follow me on Instagram and follow my Twitch. Links in the description, only if you enjoyed. And I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.